what I like about Workato is it's always been built from like a perspective, hey, Workato is going to be in here facilitating everything that's happening between multiple apps. So pre-AI, that was like, hey, let's use APIs. That way you don't have to click into a bunch of systems to get something done. You can work in one system and everything else is automated. Everything downstream happens.
Welcome to How to Grow Using AI, Machine Learning, and Intelligent Automation, a podcast by eClerks. We explore how AI and machine learning are being used to scale businesses from end to end. But that's not all. In each episode, our industry experts dive deep into topics like AI-enabled sales optimization, predictive analytics, AI-powered marketing, and machine learning for product personalization. I promise to give you the goods, the insights, and the strategies that you need to grow your business. I am your host, Nicholas Cole. I am excited. Today I have joining me Josh Lucas. He is the head of Go-to-Market Automation Solutions at Workato. He is focused on helping marketing, sales, and customer success teams implement integrated tech solutions. Josh, thanks for joining us all today.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Want to take a quick moment to let us know just a little bit more about yourself and what you do there at Workato.
Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I started in the business world as an SDR, making cold calls, sending emails, trying to get people on the phone around like data warehouse storage technology. And in that process, I kind of fell in love with the different tools that I was using, like Salesforce, what we were doing. We had Workato for our marketing automation platform, digging in and figuring out kind of how everything was running and building out processes. With that, I made a shift internally over to the marketing ops team. So since then, I've been a lot in the marketing ops world, either as a practitioner or working in MarTech companies, focused on things like B2B marketing and attribution, account-based marketing. And then about 2.5 years ago, I joined Workato really to take that perspective of the go-to-market tech stack, the marketing ops person, the rev ops person, those people who are behind the scenes making everything work, and bring it to the automation and integration space, which historically has been pretty focused on back office, back house things with IT or business systems, business technology. When I started talking to Workato about this role, it was just a light bulb moment because there have been so many places where myself or customers or people I've been working with hit walls around like systems not integrating or data being in multiple places, exporting spreadsheets. So seeing that there was a potential way to connect that all together and focus on building out good systems and processes versus trying to have to figure out how everyone can do a bunch of manual processes to make the machine work was just really exciting for me. So that's what I get to do now. I spend a lot of time with our customers and potential customers at Workato, talking through challenges, opportunities, things that they're thinking about and looking for places where automation and now with AI growing as a trend, how do we insert AI into it as well to even further take away those manual processes and help people do better work, really.
Right. So I'm glad you mentioned building systems and processes and automation. And so when you think about all of that, the bottom line is when you come to an organization, there are at least 3 things that we want to do. We want to become more efficient. We want to be more productive. And then we want to free up employees to do more meaningful work. And so when you think about all of that, how can AI assist with that?
Yeah. So what I think is really interesting about AI is it can very quickly adapt to sets of information. And if you give it the tools to plug into different systems, it can quickly basically become a superpowered calculator, right? It's very good at those logical tasks. It's very good about anything that can be tied to a data point or a point in time or these different management systems. From my point of view, what's been really exciting, just coming from the marketing ops and like go-to-market ops background, I'm most excited about AI being the best possible salesperson, CSM, AM, SC, when it comes to data entry back into your CRM, into like when you're getting data after a call. I feel like that's been such a struggle for data-driven, say, marketing teams that want to know, hey, I want to know everything about this customer, about this lead, about this prospect. But then when you try and bring that all together, you have a bunch of different fields. Some are filled out really well, some are filled out not so well. You don't really know what's the current state. And so then it makes it hard to create a data-driven marketing strategy, or on the RevOps side, have confidence in your forecasts, right? When you have different levels of sales data entry on open opportunity pipeline, it makes it really hard to predict what's going to close this quarter, what's going to close next quarter. So I love that AI can take things like a whole call transcript, and you can say, here are the fields, here are the pieces of information we need to take notes of from this call. And it can go through that, pull those out, and get that into Salesforce. So now when you look back at Salesforce or Dynamics, HubSpot, wherever your data is living, you actually have a good consolidated data set to work with.
Wow. So what kind of implementation process is involved with all of this?
Yeah. So probably the biggest hurdle in all of this right now, from what I see working both internally and with customers, is figuring out the security and privacy around what data you and your company want to give the AI, give the LLM access to. It can be a pretty tricky road to navigate, especially as you get into personally identifiable information. You think about like GDPR and those different regulations around data privacy. If you're trying to maintain your own SOC 2 compliance as a company for your product that you're taking to market, what you do with customer usage data becomes really important to stay on top of. And so everyone wants to come in and say, let's just throw all the data into the AI and let it figure everything out for us. But you really have to make sure that you're doing that right. And I think where I've seen people have the most success is doing things incrementally. So if you just want to start with one specific task or process that you think could be more automated, or where an AI assistant would be helpful to, say, your individual contributors, the different people on your team trying to get things done, identify what's the minimum data that we can feed to the AI that can still help and be helpful in this process, and then evaluate that and iterate on it over time. So you can keep feeding it more, keep building more processes into those AI-driven automations.
So AI, particularly ChatGPT and all this new stuff that's out there, just kind of took over the past 12 months. And so just say that this is an organization, and then within any industry, and they can say, we know we need to get into this, but yeah, we don't know where to start. Where did you look first to help the client locate where they can be more efficient?
I think the first thing to look at is, one, where do you have manual processes that exist that are in your day-to-day? Where do you have things that different people at your company need to do on a daily or weekly basis to do their job, but probably aren't actually written into the job description? I don't know how many people are out there putting out like IC customer facing roles, and in the job description it says, must be really good at updating Salesforce data, must take good notes and send good follow-up emails. Like, those are kind of the things that you kind of have to do your real job, which is bringing customer value, telling the value story, ultimately turning pipeline into revenue or helping customers grow. So identifying those places where things are either very manual, and I think some indicators that you can see on that manual effort is, one, you just have that direct feedback and you've seen that. But particularly as I look at some processes, places where you have a process defined, but it's being inconsistently followed. So you've maybe come up with a set of medic fields, medpic fields, however you want to define your sales qualification. But if you go and do a quick CRM report on just how many opportunities have those data points filled out, then you'll start to get an idea of like, oh, is this actually happening? And you can start to identify those areas where adding in some assistance could help to alleviate some of that or help to do better, right?
Yeah. So in opening, we mentioned that you specialize in helping marketing, sales, and customer success teams implement integrated tech solutions. And so what type of tech solutions are you implementing? Just kind of give us more of an idea. What are you doing? Kind of the nuts and bolts of that.
Yeah. So at Workato, our core technology is focused on connecting into different software via whether it's API, webhook, however we want to integrate into those systems, and then building out logical flows to describe a process, create an automation workflow that we call a recipe. So in my day-to-day, I'm typically working with the ops folks behind all the go-to-market processes. So whether that's going to be marketing ops, taking everything from the very top of funnel brand awareness through pipeline creation, sales ops or a rev ops function that helps to get from pipeline to close one, finance system handoff, and then customer success ops going through the customer journey after coming on board. I would say typically the core applications that tend to be involved in anything that we're thinking about are going to be some sort of CRM system like a Salesforce, a Dynamics, a HubSpot, a marketing automation platform, Workato, Eloqua, HubSpot again. And a lot of times, really one of the things that's an awesome accelerator is also looking at internal communication tools like Slack or Teams, and basically taking that as a great way to take data that lives in a bunch of different systems and surface it to individual contributors, to reps, where they are, where they're thinking about things. The other benefit of that that's really awesome as we think about AI and involving AI in these processes is it also helps to balance that. You're kind of in an in-between area when you start using AI solutions where you say, well, I've heard about AI hallucination. I've heard about this and that. I've heard that AI doesn't always get everything right. So you can take AI prompts, get 80, 90% there. I think a good example is like, I just had a sales call that got recorded into Zoom or Gong or Chorus, or there's so many to list at this point, but we have a call recording and I, as a sales rep, want to send a meaningful follow-up email as quickly as possible to my prospect, or as a customer success rep, I want to send a summary to my customer so that they have notes from the call as well. Being able to get 90% there in a draft of an email that's summarizing, here are the top points we talked about, here are next steps we discussed, having that 90% there and surfaced up in Slack or Teams to a rep who can then maybe make a couple edits, give it their own voice, fix something if they see something that's like way off from the LLM not reading it correctly, and then hit send. That becomes so powerful because you have this ability to hand off back and forth between the AI, between the automated process, and a human agent who's adding that human element and making sure that they're still in control of the process that is part of their job, is part of their workflow.
Right. So, I mean, I do that a lot. I have bots that are 10 meetings and then go back and read some of the notes. And then a lot of times, I mean, it's spot on. But then, like you said, there are those times when it's totally off. But like you said, it does give you a good rough draft and it speeds up the process. In your experience with your clients, I mean, what are they experience with that? I mean, do they feel it makes them faster or thinking more efficient, or what is their experience with it?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the workflow and the process. I think faster is the number one thing. So if I just keep going on that call transcript follow-up, we've seen internally, we've been tracking our data as we've been running this for ourselves. Like we went from an average of about like 24 to 48 hours of when follow-up emails from calls were sent out to under an hour. So it's like the difference between, and like, that's great in actually putting it together and saving individuals time. But I think what's more impactful is the timing of that, right? When you can get someone that follow-up information, that next step right after a great call, you just had a great call, you're very energized, you're talking to each other, there's a lot of exciting ideas going on. The faster that you can like get that response out there, the more you keep the momentum going, and the more likely you are to put the right information into your champion's hands or your person on the other line, your customer's hands, that they can then take to their boss or take to a colleague across the org or anything like that. So speeding up that communication, the timeline, I think is a really valuable part of what it can do.
Right. It's almost like when you talked about that, they kind of gave me that analogy. I thought about the old classic upsell when you're in the grocery store and you're already about to buy something, you're warm already. And then that's the best time to go ahead and get that upsell. They have those extra Reese's Pieces, a Snicker bar that's there. And I say, well, I'll just go ahead and pick that up. And I see that kind of the same thing with a potential client that you may have, or even like you said, just following up, just being that much faster. I mean, everything is warm. You have a warm lead there. And the quicker you are with that, they're impressed a little bit more by your speed and your accuracy. And then it makes your organization look that much better. And so when you think about that in that vein, what technology that you're most excited about to help organizations to be more efficient, be more productive, and free up for more employees?
Well, I think my obvious answer is going to be Workato up front, but I have to say that first. No, I think we're in a really interesting time right now with AI and with the way that systems like ChatGPT via OpenAI have the ability to plug in really well into other systems. For Workato customers, that's, hey, we're just going to connect an API connection to OpenAI. So then we can use ChatGPT, we can use image generation, we can use those elements and create things that go back and forth. But it's also just a really interesting time to be looking at new technology and different things like that, because there's a lot of solutions out there that are embedding those AI components like an OpenAI into just a bespoke product that's going to do one specific task. I think one other one that we use internally that I think is really exciting, that's a little bit outside of what I would talk with customers about, but we started using this AI powered search internally with this company called Glean. And basically they're combining your LLM that you're plugging into, and then also connecting into any of these data sources that you have for internal knowledge. So for us, it's like our Google Drive, we have HighSpot for sales and customer external facing content, it connected into our Slack, into our Confluence for all of our internal support things. And it's just like completely changed the game in terms of like internal efficiency, in terms of like, do we have information about this topic? I can type and I can ask that to the ChatGPT powered chat within Glean, and then it's going to look through our data that we have as a company and find me, oh, hey, someone made a slide deck about NetSuite that they used with the different customers. Like, okay, that's already done. Oh, now I can see like, oh, and let's start a chat with that person who built this. So that way I can ask them some questions. So skipping over those steps, I feel like there's so much time in every organization or in every, I'd say even individual's life, like working in their job, where you spend so much time each week just trying to hunt down the right person or the right piece of information, or even worse, you don't realize that something exists and you don't find it in that hunt. And then you go and start building something again. And then you end up creating something that like someone else has already built. So places that you can find those efficiencies, I think are really interesting from my perspective. In addition to like the whole idea of just like, let's take a process and put AI and automation into it to increase efficiency from that perspective. Does that make sense?
This makes sense. So in terms of customer retention, customer churn, obviously that's really big for any company. No matter how big or small you are, customer churn is definitely important. And so how can AI assist with that?
So I think there's some interesting things around customer churn. I think one of the things that's really, we're kind of at this crossroads where over the last 15, 20 years, like we've been all about collecting data about our customers, whether it's like in-app product usage data, whether it's like going to third-party providers to get additional data on this company or this person, different enrichment. We ask customers, like we ask them to fill out surveys on how's their customer satisfaction. And we ask all this information. But I think most companies, it's a big struggle. It's one thing to collect all that data. It's another thing to do something meaningful with it. And so I see this come up on like my LinkedIn thread from time to time. I see this come up, even personal experience. It's like, oh, I just had a whole conversation with the support chat. And then when I got on the phone with my CSM the next week, they had no knowledge of it. And it's like that like disconnect, I think, creates this negative customer experience, which is a contributing factor for churn or reduction. And so where I think AI is really interesting in that is that AI is really good at taking mass amounts of data, taking all that unstructured data and summarizing key points. So I think there's two ways that I'm working with customers and what we're doing internally I think are really effective. I think number one is feeding that data set into your AI and giving it ways to pick up on certain thresholds to say, okay, these things are risk factors for this customer. So now I can alert my account team earlier and more often when we see that happening. Because if you're trying to save a customer from churning 1 month from their contract when they sent you an email telling you that they're not going to renew, that's going to be a way harder process than if you reach out to a customer 6 months ahead of their contract because you've seen usage drop off or because you have an LLM that's identified trends that are giving you an earlier indication.
Wow. That's big. It's definitely big. And so when we think about that, and obviously those are some things that Workato does, I'm just interested. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there, a lot of AI out there, a lot of changes going on. I want to give you a moment to shine, a moment to tap your chest a little bit. What makes Workato different from everything else that's out there?
I think particularly in what we're seeing with AI and a lot of tools coming out where you can go out and you can go buy an AI email writer. You can go get an AI like prospecting tool. And like there's a lot of ways that you can get these one-off tools. What I like about Workato is it's always been built from like a perspective, hey, Workato is going to be in here facilitating everything that's happening between multiple apps. So pre-AI, that was like, hey, let's use APIs. That way you don't have to click into a bunch of systems to get something done. You can work in one system and everything else is automated. Everything downstream happens. Similarly with AI, I think that's a really important piece. One, because it gives companies control over what AI they're going to use. Going back to like what we're talking about, like security and privacy. If you have to do that every time you pick up a new tool because it's got an AI co-pilot and it integrates into your sales, like you have so much that you have to evaluate. Versus if you have a tool like Workato, you can have one set AI, one set LLM that you're connecting into that you take full security control over, and then you can plug it into all the different areas. That also gives you the ability to make your LLM actually a competitive advantage for you because you are feeding it with specific data sets. For example, we do it with our Workato selling system, which is our like internal process for everything that should happen in a Workato sales cycle to make sure that the prospect or customer sees value and goes through this whole thing. So when we're talking about having our sales assistant AI help draft follow-up emails and help do all of these things, it's already been fully trained on the same thing that every Workato seller, every Workato CSM gets trained on when they come on board. So now it's not just giving us generated information using that generative AI, it's in the context of everything that we fed to it. So I think that's one really powerful element. And a reason to think about like having a process to not rely on individual AIs in all of these different products, but instead taking that control and feeding it into your processes the way you want to.
Josh, you provided us some amazing insights on today. And so I just been sitting here and I've been wondering with all the changes going on, with all the new technologies out there and everything else that's going on in the world, just wondering if you had an opportunity to take one person to lunch, who would that one person be and why?
It's a good question. I think I'd be really interested to take someone who's a little bit outside of the technology space, someone who's maybe in a political space that isn't in the day-to-day of what's happening in AI and keeping up. I mean, like if I can pick anyone, I'll take Joe Biden out to lunch and have a deep conversation. And I really like to understand from his perspective, as you think about everything beyond my world of like being very tech focused and how can we use this and how can we do this? Like what are bigger picture ways that we can be thinking about AI? Are there ways that we're already thinking about the logistics of running an entire country made of 50 different states that are all doing all kinds of these different legislative processes and things like that? There has to be room for efficiency improvements. There has to be room for ways that we can make individual people's lives better by leveraging some of these tools. But of course, we have to do it very carefully. So like, I'd also just be really curious to think, what are those high level cautions? What are those high level warning signs that we should be thinking about collectively as a country, or even if we wanted to go more globally across the world, to just think about where do we pump the brakes a little bit and slow things down, or where do we lean in and say, this is going to be a very helpful and efficient use of technology?
Wow. I just want to remind you, look, you have my email, my contact information. And so somehow, some way you end up getting that lunch, don't forget to send me a message and see if you can get me in there too. So I would love to be like a fly on the wall there. So, I mean, that would be an interesting lunch. I think it was sometime in October of November last year, they did put in the beginning stages of trying to regulate AI. And so just to be able to pick Joe Biden's brain would be awesome. And so don't forget about me if you get that invitation. And so, Josh, it has been a pleasure to have you here. It's been a true honor. You provided some amazing insights. You're doing some great things over there, Ricardo. Wish you well. We know you're going to do some more great things, and we know that the best is yet to come. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and tune in to our next episode.
How to Grow Using AI, Machine Learning, and Intelligent Automation is brought to you by eClerks. For more information about services and how we can help your business leverage the power of AI and machine learning, visit our website at www.eclerks.com. That's www.eclerx.com. Don't forget to search for How to Grow Using AI, Machine Learning, and Intelligent Automation on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes. On behalf of everyone here at eClerks, thanks for listening.